Well, greetings, everybody. This is our California Map Society Greater Los Angeles Mappers Holiday Cocoa and Coffee meeting. Thank you all for attending today. I will fill in for Courtney Spikes. She had a death in her family, and she has some elder care issues that she's working with out of state. So our hearts go out to her. She has recently lost her mother just before Thanksgiving.
Oh,
My name's Therese Melbar. I am hosting the monthly GLAM Gals meeting. It's a virtual online meeting, and it takes place the second Monday of every month at 7:30 in the evening. I invite everybody to come attend. This was pretty much set up for new people who are not really sure about map sharing. Also, it was a way to help women generally, but anyone maybe practice their map sharing in a smaller group, just so that when we have our bigger meetings that they'll be more comfortable in attending that. Today we have President Ron Gibbs and Vice President Tom Paper here. And I think, Ron, you just wanted to say something to us real quick.
Well, I do. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the GLAM meeting. Jane and I are actually in Los Angeles. We're having extended Thanksgiving holiday and watching our grandchildren for a few days. So we're honoring GLAM by being here. So thanks to Therese and Tom for setting up the program today. We thank Courtney for organizing the meeting today and our holiday policy. We do express our heartfelt condolences to Courtney and her dad on the very sudden passing of her mother. So we wish everyone who's celebrating happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy upcoming Christmas, other holidays as well. And we look forward to a happier, healthier, and productive 2022. Back to you, Therese.
Thank you, Ron. Tom, he is our vice president, and he's going to be working on the technical side of things today. Also, he might take us to the digital gallery if we have some time at the end of the meeting. Also, Tom has some news for us.
I have some news. Wait, what's my news?
I think you're going to tell us about a photo shoot opportunity.
Oh, well, okay. Well, this is an idea that we've been mulling. And maybe we can go into this more later, but the general idea is to have a gathering. We can do it at anybody's house. I would do it at my house first, where people could come and bring their maps, and we would digitize them with a high resolution camera that I have, and then do a little bit of post-processing and load them onto the digital gallery so people could have copies of their maps online. And we could do that through maps that are flat or rolled, and also framed maps. As long as it's museum glass, we can make the light work. So.
Oh, wonderful. Tom, thank you very much. Juliet Rothman is our VP for publications. She's the editor of Calafia, and she was just going to give us a brief update on what we can expect with the next publication. But unfortunately, she has a health issue which prevents her from being here today. She might check in later if possible, but we're hope she heals soon.
I just spoke to her, and she's having an MRI. And she's out of it from all the pain medication. So I don't think she's going to tune in. She's still an X-ray, but maybe Fred can give you some kind of an update. I'm not that familiar with what you would want to say about that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
At our board meeting, I wasn't really prepared for this, but at our board meeting, we Juliet gave a little description of how we're doing on the spring issue, and I showed a slide of the all of the contributors. Basically, most of the content has already been established, and we are awaiting authors' text so that Juliet can edit, and I'm awaiting the images so that I can start formatting the issue. Most of that work is going to be done late in January, and I'll probably have a very busy February. I'm pleased that
are also being responsible for it.
oh, we're getting a little bit of echo there. I'm pleased that my eyes are better, and I had some swelling of my retina, and but the visual acuity is back, so I feel comfortable spending hour after hour in front of the computer in February.
Marvelous.
I want to compliment you, Fred, on your digitization and arrangement of images. You do a spectacular job. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Well, it takes the cooperation of our contributors, and I encourage them to supply as high a resolution of the images as possible. And we've got a good partnership here in Santa Cruz. I really didn't expect it to have such a fine printer available to us. So I have to give credit to a local printer who has done a marvelous job in making the right paper selection and being very patient with me through 2 or 3, sometimes 4 printers proofs. And I think I'm pleased, and I know Juliet is pleased at the result.
It's an art magazine pretending to be a Map Society journal.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
It's beautiful, every issue.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Fred.
Next, I would actually like to take a moment and thank all of the donors, people who have donated just to the California Map Society and specifically for our education fund. The education fund actually permits us to have either experts in their field or noted authors to come out and give a presentation in the northern and the southern part of California. We also support with the David Rumsey Map Center, the student paper event every year, and we have an annual guest curatorial program, and your donations to our society helps fund this. So thank you to anyone who's donated this year, or even if you're thinking about donating, thank you very much. Quickly to move on to our presentation. If you would like to present today, you can drop your name in the chat, let us know what you have, and we'll take you as we have time. So far, no one has signed up. But as we get going, we'll just pretty much have you introduce yourself and maybe tell us something about yourself or what brought you to the California Map Society, or how you first realized you were interested in maps. And we'll take it from there. We're hoping to take a break maybe about 9:30. And again, about 10 o'clock, just so you can refill your beverage, warm your cocoa, get some coffee, have a splash of something in there. And then we'll just have some wrap up comments right before 10:30. Is there anybody who would like to start?
Be right back. Yeah.
I have just one thing to share.
Yes, Louise?
Hey.
My husband and I like to go to little collectible malls. And this one was in, I think, Arroyo Grande or Paso Robles, I don't remember, years ago. And I found 2 Nescafe glass little mugs that are like a globe. Let's see.
Years ago.
There you go.
Hmm.
And there were more, but I only bought 2. I should have bought more, but anyway. That's my introduction.
That's a nice bit of ephemera.
Yes.
In fact, if anyone has a book or something they want to show us or recommend to us, let us know.
I have a little presentation I put together.
Do you want to start, Fred?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll need to share my screen.
You should be able to.
All right.
Yep, we can see your browser.
Okay. Took me a little. Oh,
There we go. Oh,
what's happening with the the echo there?
I think we lost it.
Excuse me. Takes me a little while to navigate the screen here. This is a continuation of a little presentation I gave
A while ago.
a while ago at I think it was Nick Canis's house in December of 2019, and I talked about some maps that I put together as part of my genealogy research on my family, and I kind of focused on the big picture of the migration from Quebec to Minnesota. And I thought I'd delve more deeply into that this time and just show you a couple of examples of what I've done recently to locate a couple of farms in the midst of extensive suburban expansion in Hennepin County. I'm sure most of you are aware that Hennepin County is where Minneapolis is located, and I grew up about 20 miles northwest of Minneapolis, not far from the Mississippi River. My second great grandfather, Louis Fabian Desjardins, and that's one of the early spellings of the name, the addition of the S between E and J. He arrived in Minnesota Territory in early 1855, and I have a great little certificate that was produced by Louis with the Minnesota Territory authorities, and it's clearly put together by a clerk because all he has was an X, so he could not write. Has an X. The spelling throughout is a little inconsistent, but I'm certain that he was one of the first Desjardins that entered Minnesota Territory. I believe that, and I'm not with any certainty, that he arrived first in Little Canada, which is north of St. Paul, and was an enclave of settlers from Canada, and specifically from that section of Quebec, right along the St. Lawrence River. And he was a farmer, and a little backstory on that. The area around between Montreal and Quebec City suffered from an explosion, population explosion back in the 1600s and early 1700s. The French Catholics had huge families, and they They might have families of 12 or 14 children, many of them males. The first male, the oldest male, inherited the farm property, and the other males often were left without an opportunity to farm land along the river. So they sought two solutions. One, to move up into Canada and become hunters and trappers. And the other solution, and that's what my family, a branch of my family did, is to migrate to the United States and find good farmland. And of course, Minnesota and Wisconsin and Iowa, good farmland. Lewis started farming a 40-acre parcel in Dayton Township, part of Hennepin County. I then looked at the maternal side for another farm, and that was a cousin, Jerry Zupfe, and he was not far away, just north of Osseo, Minnesota, and in Champlin Township. Here's an early territorial map of Minnesota, and you can see the huge expanse of Minnesota at that time. Covered most of the Dakotas, a good part of the area south of South Dakota, which I think was at that time part of the Iowa territory. Eventually that state got whittled down, and instead of having the Missouri River as the western boundary, the Red River in the north became the westerly boundary of Minnesota. I was lucky to find some excellent images of early township maps of Hennepin County. In fact, of most of the counties in Minnesota, some of which are produced by the state of Minnesota, others by the Bochert Map Library of the University of Minnesota, and thirdly, some excellent aerial archives of from the county of Hennepin. On this 1913 Hennepin County Atlas, I've noticed two farm sites, one by Lewis, and we usually called him Fabian, and Joel, who's his brother. So both of them, whether they came at the same time or Joel perhaps slightly later, I'm not certain. On the left, that's actually the earlier slide was of a atlas of 1873. I think I'm didn't have the right date on that. This one, however, is somewhat later, 1913. And you can see there's 4 farms now in the area just easterly of French Lake in Dayton Township, with Fabian and his brother Joel still having sites, and then Fabian's first cousin having farm site, and then John Desjardins, who I've been unable to track up so far. I'm sure he's a son of one of the Desjardins relatives who migrated early. I was struck by the remarkable difference in these two flat maps. The visual clarity much better on the 1914 atlas. Just a year later, the cartography is certainly more sophisticated. All in all, a nice cartographic product. The first farm I was trying to find was owned by the Libera family, and Evelyn Libera, who is the wife of my paternal uncle Kenneth, grew up there, and I, in the 1950s, I made several trips to visit, and then later, when those two individuals passed, the farm went to one of my cousins. So I still visited that farm later in the 1960s. With all of the principals deceased, I had to rely on my own memory, but also on this excellent selection of aerial photos produced by the county. I chose 1957 because I knew that was a period when that farm did exist, because I visited it. And so in the midst of all of this, this area right here is just completely covered with suburban homes, the urban expansion in the metropolitan Minneapolis-St. Paul area. So I'm quite comfortable now that I've located that particular farm, and I'm able now to share this information with other members of the family. I've become, at least from the mapping standpoint, the family historian, trying to find somebody a few decades younger to develop some interest so that they can carry on after my eyes give out in other parts. This gives you a kind of a picture of what's happened here in the last several decades. This is a 2020 ortho photo on the right, and just a little segment from the 1913 atlas, showing that probably had a population of similar area, and maybe had a population of 25 or 30 people, and now probably thousands on the right. This gives you an idea of what that interface looks like on the Hennepin County Aerial Imagery Viewer. So you can select, I selected 1957, but I went all the way back to 1940 and right through 2020, I think maybe 21, that's available. It was pretty easy to do some scaling and get some distances to more precisely locate these farms, because you can clearly detect on the plat maps, you can detect the township boundaries. So this is work in progress, and it's an enthusiasm of mine, and I'm going to continue to do some work to be able to share with my other family members and members of the MAP Society. So thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah. Teresa, I have a question for Fred. It's Ron. So Fred, when Louis Desjardins made the trek from Canada to Minnesota, did they come out by themselves, or was it part of a wagon train group? Do you know?
I think they came in quite small groups. And I think they were family groups. I've got a friend who's a Gervais and also a distant relative, and she's done quite a bit of research in that area. And I believe that the Gervais and the Jarlais came together also a couple of times, probably in the 1800s to settle in Minnesota. I'm hoping that in a future visit back to Minnesota that I'll be able to go to the Maple Grove Historical Society and also a little, particularly to the Little Canada Historical Society and do some firsthand research in their offices.
Fascinating.
Fred, one of my other interests is genealogy. And I've been at that for a long time now. This is one of the problems with genealogy at times is that people often present it is who begot whom, et cetera, et cetera. So after time, a lot of these are names that nobody's ever heard of before. So who got who gets pretty boring after a while. And I find that people tune out pretty quickly. So if you want to get people's interest, what you do is you put together stories. What you've put together, Fred, is particularly clever, because my two principal interests are genealogy and maps. And by gosh, they actually fit together because you can get some unique insights. I've done some of the same things you are. I've actually traveled places and taken pictures of Midwest family farms, et cetera, et cetera. So it gives people a bite-sized view. And when they have a bite-sized view with an interesting story, they'll absorb it and remember it rather than flooding them with too much information. Now, my question for you, have you ever used census data, town histories, and those kinds of things?
Yes, I have. I did make a visit to New York City and New York City Public Library, and I went through their archives and I was able to spend some time with two early census books of the territory of Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
And it was very interesting to see the geographic progression of the family from one census to the next. The gravitation, this early gravitation to population centers. So Minneapolis and St. Paul were significant draws even at that time.
Mm-hmm. But there's a wealth of information. There's a wealth of information that's digitized now that you can access online that wouldn't even thought about 20 years ago, where you can fill in a lot of missing pieces. Because the different census give you an awful lot of different information on different kinds of things, and each census is a little bit different in terms of what their
This story would have gotten too long if I had gotten into
oh no, I completely agree.
The impact of DNA testing, for instance, which I'm also quite interested in, and I've had DNA tests from two different organizations and located some, let's call it very surprising information. And one of the farms was in the just outside of Osseo, and a first cousin from a second marriage grew up there, and I knew him and I played with him. He was 2, 3, or 4 years younger than I was, and he fathered a child out of wedlock, and of course in recent months that relative has contacted me, and he wants to find out who his family was.
Sure.
And that's just one of two instances in recent history here that I've helped people locate their birth parents.
Mhm.
Very,
Very
very
nice.
important to me because it's we have an adopted daughter also who's now almost 50 years old. So it's an aspect that's close to my heart.
Okay, well, thank you, Fred.
Mhm.
It's 9:32 right now. If we could maybe just take a short break, 5-7 minutes. We'll wait till pretty much everybody's back and we'll get started. Emily, you have a miniature map you think you'd like to show us?
It's a miniature map library. I customized the dollhouse kit and thought it was cute. I wanted to share, but I think some other people want to share as well.
Marvelous. And then if we could have Cynthia up right after Emily to show us your treaty map.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so we'll be back in 5 or so. I'll stay on if anyone wants to chat. And if you need to just go take a break, refill your beverage, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Hello, I'll
Super.
be happy to give a presentation whenever you want me to with a report from the Belgian Map Circle, as well as a couple of other interesting items.
Perfect. Thank you, Leonard.
And then
Hey, Fred.
Therese, we also heard from Tim, right, Therese?
Yeah, Tim Weiskell has the emerging digital technologies based on where we're at, maybe right before our next break or maybe immediately after the next break.
Hey, Fred,
Sounds like we
through
got a full
DNA
agenda.
testing, we found out that my husband's surname Ratliff is DNA related to Harper. But lots of Harper men have had Y DNA testing, but it's back so far, who knows whether we'll ever find out where the Harpers and the Ratliffs were together.
Fred, I really enjoyed your presentation. In 1968, I was the first family member on my dad's Italian side to cross the Atlantic. My grandparents came over around the turn of the century. And I went back to the family village, which is the foothills of the Alps in far northern Italy. And the map that I don't have a copy of, unfortunately, is the map of the distribution of property by air rights and basically some of the highest vineyards in Europe, way up in the high moraines near the entrance to the Valle d'Aosta. The properties were broken up over so many generations. When my cousin took me out to show me his vineyards, he took me to at least 4 of them, and they were 15 feet wide and 75 feet long. And the fractioning of the property ownership was just fascinating to see, because it's all very hilly, of course, and see these things wrapped over these hills, sort of like the size of Napa Valley, where you see those gorgeous vineyards and lines rolling over the hills. Those are kind of the same thing, but on a micro scale. It was a fascinating experience. And when I went around the village, everybody I met was a distant relative by 4 or 5 generations back. So when my cousin walked me down the street, he'd introduce me, and literally he'd go through this 90-second revelation about the family trees and how they intersected. I did do a hand-drawn graphic of the previous 4 generations, so I can pass that on to my children, of which they have very little interest. But thank you. I really appreciate the connection between the family tree and the real estate, how the property, how the assets get passed on. And there's some real interesting studies on the Big Island of Hawaii about the fractionation of when they finally did LiDAR mapping of the Big Island. They could see the history of the walls becoming smaller and smaller over the generations, going back, I think it was 300 or 400 years. So there's some real interesting mapping graphics of that inheritance pattern of family assets in terms of real estate. Thank you. Great presentation. Really look forward to the spring issue. Is there a theme to it?
Native American mapping.
Oh, it's still, oh, great.
Wow.
And we have a really great interest by contributors, a great response. So we could have produced a journal 20 or pages or so longer, just by the interest that we had from contributors. But that's a project too far.
Fred, can I ask you, is there a way to tell in advance what the subjects might be for someone who might want to submit an article in the future?
Well, we have shared that our plans for future themed issues with the society, during our board meetings, for instance. And right now, Native American mapping for the spring, and then art in maps for the fall. And then the following spring, I believe we're going to be doing marine naval or marine charts. So charts based on early exploration.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Not quite everybody's back yet. We'll give them another couple minutes. And then we'll start off with Emily and then Cynthia. And we'll see if we have time for someone else or if it'll be break time.
Therese, I thought Peter wanted to do something about 3A's maps.
Oh, you know what? I saw that. I wasn't sure what that the AA meant. I didn't know that he wanted to present, but I'll contact him and we'll fit him in too.
Here I am.
Peter, did you want to present?
I would be happy to. It's brief, but
Okay. Did you want to go right before Emily then?
I'm flexible.
Are you ready right now or do you need
I
some
am.
time to get set up?
I
Okay.
am ready.
Okay.
So are we on?
Yeah. Do you need to share the screen?
No, it's low tech. So, but as it says in the lower left corner, my name is Peter Hiller, and I've been a member of the Map Society for a number of years. I came to the Map Society as a result of my interest in Joe Mora, who's a name you may get sick of hearing me repeat, but he was a cartographer amongst other things, and that's probably what he's best known for. But my presentation this morning is a little lowbrow. I just came back yesterday from a 3-week road trip from California, Carmel, where I live, to Santa Fe and Albuquerque and back again. And we always travel with AAA maps. At the risk of this being something somebody else has done a presentation about, we use these all the time. They have a treasured place in our car, and I have a favorite, which is the AAA's Indian country map. And this has been published repeatedly over the years. And every time we're in the Southwest, we get a new copy of it. And I don't know if you could see it or not, but after a trip, I go back through it and I highlight the route that we took through the Southwest, just as a keepsake. But this particular map, I think, far exceeds what the AAA normally does in terms of just creating road maps. And this one is full of fantastic historic information. One side is the road map, the other side are little paragraphs about, hundreds of places where you can stop, and they've got little information with them. But it's just a wonderful map. I love it. We've probably, if I was to make a layer of all the roads we've been on almost all of them throughout the Southwest at one point or another. In fact, our new challenge now is really to find routes we haven't taken as we travel through the Southwest. And so it's just a little silly, but I just love this map and wanted to share it. So thank you.
Love it.
Thank you, Peter. Emily, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I am having some technical issues. I joined on my phone as well, so I could show my map. Can you see this video? I'm going to try to spotlight it, but I'm having an issue.
Take your time.
Yeah, I was able to spotlight Peter, but I can't spotlight my mobile. Can you see this clearly? This little pamphlet?
Oh, look at
No.
that.
I can't see
Wait,
it.
hold on. Let's see if we can. Oh, there we go. All right, hold on. Let me spotlight. There
Yeah, it
we
might be a
go.
little hard to see.
There we go. Cool.
So I
Nice.
bought this kit online and I customized it to reflect my love of maps in addition to my love of books. And I think my favorite part is actually this little chair here. I bought this map fabric on Etsy, and a lot of maps nowadays don't show New Zealand, especially artistic maps that peel upon their walls for decorations. So I decided to cut out New Zealand and spotlight it here so that I would have a place to shine. And these are just some maps that I really like. We got some medieval maps here. This is a German map of the Arctic, and that white part actually says unexplored in German, which we don't see on modern maps. So I just love that little detail. That's a map of the Band Islands. And I also really like these miniature globes. I found them online. This is Peter Afian's work on cosmography. And I got this paper. It's scrapbook paper, but you can actually see there like a map of the coast there, Florida.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah. So just felt like sharing because maps have gotten me into miniatures. I also have two more little globes here that I found online.
Those are wonderful.
And these are actual books that I've enjoyed. So here's Map Head by Ken Jennings. So I actually have the physical actual book
How
here.
did you get it so small?
I just print these at Staples. So I go on Microsoft Word and I just scale the cover images down, and then I just cut it out and glue it. So it's actually really simple. It's a lot of fun to have this little shelf here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of
I
work.
have this box so that I can keep it from getting dusty. Yeah, that's all.
Emily, that's amazing. I love it.
So tell us about the book that started, you showed us the book. So is that a kit of some sort?
Which books? The actual books or the fake ones? In
No, the
came up
first
with
one
it?
that you showed us, was that a
Oh,
kit?
yeah. Yeah, so that's a kit from Robotime. It's pretty popular. If you go on like the Reddit page for miniatures, there are so many different customizations of it. And I just found it on Amazon, but you can get it from a lot of different online retailers.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
So here's it again.
Emily, do you belong to the Miniature Book Society?
I did not know that was a thing, but I should definitely look into it now.
I bet if you took pictures of your little libraries and sent them in, they'd probably put it in their publication. That's fabulous.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that there's a society for that. Sounds
wow.
Not only a society for that, a lot of us who are teachers would love to do this and learn how to do it. So you should set up a little instruction
sure.
sequence on YouTube for us, because, well, nothing will get people more interested in something than a little picture book to page through. And that can be linked through a QR code to a website that, you know, takes them as far as they want to go. But if they have something in hand, and you can obviously reduce it to the size of something that can be put in hand, they can explore it on their own. And this is even those miniature ones you've got there are large enough on the last page to have a QR code. So they could then take their cell phone, snap the QR code, and get right out to the thousands of pages that might be behind it. It's a good way to introduce a collection for example, at a library or at a museum.
That's a really cool idea to have QR codes. I feel like now I have this whole other avenue to go down and have fun with.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would think that you know, within a little planning here and with Tom's paper skill, you could actually have these distributed as people go in to see museum collections in the Met and places like that.
Oh, wow.
That
No,
is
it's
a great
true.
idea.
Because it's like taking a program going into a symphony orchestra concert, right? And the program is mostly ads. So you're not being told a whole lot about the sequence of major music that you're about to hear. People spend their time looking at the ads and who's sponsoring this and that. Well, just think, if people had something that they could not only put in a hand, but put in a pocket and take away and look at and say, hey, I want to find out more than that. And they go to the back page, scan in the thing, look up the title of the thing and say, oh my goodness, who knew? And you know, the supporting institution like the Met, or for example, the any one of the specialized museums, like the, you know, I'm thinking now because I've been there recently, the Bedford Whaling Museum in New Bedford, Massachusetts, has fascinating maritime maps, which is one of the themes that I thought you were going to be looking at in your future publications. If they had something like this to hand out to school children as they came through, can you imagine the volume of people that would start to flow through museums and into documentation? It's really staggering. Thank you so much.
And Emily, I just want to share with you, of course, there's a Joe Moore miniature book too.
Ah, of course.
So it's a little biography. So it's less than 2 inches by 2 inches. Right.
There you go. Well,
Wow.
just that you can start with quotations from chairman, this, that, and the other thing. And you could have quotations from every favorite person you wanted to highlight in a course, for example. But my mind runs in terms of teaching things because I've spent 50 years teaching in universities, but it doesn't take much to ignite student interest, but it usually has to do with igniting their curiosity. And that's what your thing would do immediately. What the heck is this? Why is it this size? Why can't I learn out more? And if you give them a QR code, there's no restraint. You wouldn't be able to catch up with them, is what it amounts to.
Well, thank you very much. You know, this seems like a nice topic for a future meeting, definitely. At this point, Cynthia, are you ready to present? You have a tribal treaty mapper?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And it looks like we only have about 10 minutes till our next break. We can run over a little bit, but just to let you know where we are with our time. I have 9:50 right now.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long at all. It's just a quick thing that I found out there. All right, so I will share my screen. There we go. Hopefully. Can you guys see this map?
Coming.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I found this one. It was actually for some stuff related to my job. But I thought it was super cool. I didn't know this existed, and you guys might be featuring it in the upcoming journal as well. But what I thought was really cool about this is it's kind of a combination of work that's been done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Forest Service. And they've created this mapper, and it links up to some collections that are out there, I believe, at the Library of Congress. So I'll just click in on an area. We'll go over here to New Mexico. And this, what you're seeing are areas that have been digitized that are actually represented in treaties in that. So I just thought this was really cool. Had not really seen this before. And what it's going to do is for this area, it's popping up the information about the treaties. And so it mentions what tribe was mentioned in that treaty. And then these are the present day tribe names for that. So if we just click on one of these to see the information, well, first I'll scroll through here. You know, it gives information about it in the different counties. And then I'll just click some of these links and you can see how it's actually going out to show the documentation about these lands being ceded to the United States. And then if we go back over to the mapper, here's an executive order. So again, I think this one's probably going to be from the 1800s here. For that area, the Bosque Redondo Reserve. So you're looking at just these older documents. And I just thought this was really interesting to see this. You know, you have stuff coming from NARA, the National Archives, the executive order. And then if you come down here, this is a map collection, I believe that's coming out of the Library of Congress, and it shows the actual map.
Nice.
Wow. Of that. And so I just, you know, I just thought this was, it's an interesting.
Somebody put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, and you're seeing in one map here, this culmination of just all these different events, you know, and I think it's just a very interesting map. And so there's a whole lot on here. You know, this is obviously mapping, and you're seeing treaties over here, you know, that show from the 1800s. I didn't really look over on the East Coast. I was curious about that. But I just wanted to get this out there for people to see if they're interested in it. And that's all I have on that.
Wow, Cynthia, it's wonderful. I'm going to share this with my colleague at the American Indian Study Center at UCLA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, please share with us all. I don't know if you can drop a URL or something in the chat, or send it around to us later, because this is precisely what we're trying to do in reference to African history and the use of maps in Africa as a way to key in interest from, again, students all over the world, which, as you've illustrated very elegantly here, you can put whatever documents you want behind whatever square you want.
Very nice.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. I'll stop my video.
Do you know what the Royce maps are that are referred to here? It looks like it's.
I thought it was a collection. It was basically like cataloging and a report done in the 1890s. And I don't know if it was like a report to Congress or a report to what would become the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And those folks were charged with basically going back through the past 120 years of treaties and pulling that together to have this as a report in that 90s time frame. At least that's how I read it when I was reading the metadata.
And Cynthia, how does this relate to your work?
You know, so in my job, I am a GIS specialist, and some of my tribal liaison folks had asked me to build a web app like this for current contacts with tribal chair people in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Arizona. And so I was just researching what was already out there to give them a series of tools before I built anything as well. So it was just research.
Cool.
Cynthia, can I ask you what brought you to mapping? How did you realize that you loved maps?
So my end, everybody cut out. Teresa, what was that question?
I just want to ask you what brought you to mapping, and when did you realize that you loved maps? What's your background there?
You know, actually, I've always enjoyed maps, and it was actually a high school global studies class where I was assigned to teach about the island of Taiwan, and so just getting that information and then sharing it with our class, and that kind of kicked it off for me, you know. And then studying about diseases of man and his domesticated animals and how disease travels with that, and we used mapping in that class. So,
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, Cynthia, where do you work?
I actually work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for the Southwest region here.
Oh, well, you should join WAML. I'll put the URL in the chat.
Oh, yeah, and I don't. Let me see if I can stop sharing here. There we go. I'll leave it.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm not on video because my internet keeps getting a little janky here.
That's okay. That's okay. Cynthia, thank you for sharing.
Cynthia, that was fantastic.
Okay. So it looks like we can probably just take our next break really quick. And Tim Weiskell will be back right after. He'll start off, and it's going to be emerging digital technologies. Is that okay with you, Tim?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure,
I have to make a phone call. Give me an idea when you'll make my presentation.
Right after Tim. So
Okay, great.
probably
Thank
about
you.
10:15.
No problem.
10:20.
No problem. I'll make the phone call.
Okay. Thank you, Leonard.
Therese, I think Trish Caldwell wanted to make an announcement also, just checking on the chat.
Just really minor, tiny.
Go ahead.
Oh, I can do it now really quickly.
Yeah.
I happened to be at an exhibit yesterday afternoon at the Crocker Museum here in Sacramento. And in addition to the one that we were there to see, they happen to have an exhibit called Towns, Trains, and Terrain. And in that, it was all from the Peter T. Pope Early California collection. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. I was not, and I haven't had a chance to follow up on any of this, but they did have, it's now become a permanent part of the Crocker. And there were 10 maps of California, or certainly of Western Hemisphere, pretty early ones, very interesting ones as part of the collection that they were showing. And it's just a heads up for you to, if you're interested. And if anybody knows anything about Peter T. Pope, if he's ever been a member of the society, I don't know, or his collection, but it was pretty significant. So just a heads up. That's it.
Trish, thank you very much.
Welcome. And just as a history, Norman Thrower made me join the California Map Society when it was formed.
Well, let's thank him.
I was a grad student. We had to do it. So I'm still here. It's good.
Well, marvelous.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll see you all after the break. I will stay on if anyone. Yes.
Therese, I've got just a quick low-tech thing that relates to both Cynthia and Peter's presentation. It's a 1960 cartograph of Navajo land.
That's great.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, fabulous.
And it's just full of interesting biases.
Yeah.
Oh.
As you can imagine, it's very dated in its attitude and graphic portrayal of the Navajo. I also found, digging through my father's stuff, he would never talk about World War II, but I found this map in his stuff, and I think this may have been his division,
Wow.
the 110th, which he may have been involved at Bastogne, I'm not sure.
Wow.
But it was just a nice thing to recover. I didn't even realize I had it. So I'm going to dig into that.
I'd love to hear about that. My father-in-law was a member of the 110th. He died recently, but we have very little to go on. So if you ever find more information on that, I'd love to find out about it.
It'll be a while if it happens, but I'm happy to share whatever I find, Peter. Thank you for your presentations. I always enjoy them.
This is Tim.
Oh, sorry. I thought. Thank you, Tim.
For those who are staying for the break, any books you've recently read that you'd like to recommend to us?
Okay, Cynthia. I'm currently reading. It's I think it's Mr. Selden's Map of China. Has anybody else read that before?
No.
It is, yeah, I found it on Amazon, and it is a map that is what we know of, the first Chinese merchant map. So the map actually centers on what today we call the South China Sea, and it shows the seafaring trade routes. I will, I'm not even going to attempt the names because I'll probably butcher them, but from what's that? Sorry.
It's called Mr. Sullivan. What's the?
No, I have it here. I'll send it in the chat, Peter. I mean, Tom, here's just a link to the eBay connection to it. So it's not an authoritative entry to a library, but basically you can take a click on it and trace it through the ISBN.
And I'll put in a link on the actual map that you can view it from. Because they're the ones that have the copy. It's just an interesting book.
Sounds great. I started a book by Hampton Sides about the search for the Northwest Passage and the North Pole in the 1880s. And there's all sorts of map references in it. It's been a lot of fun.
I just got a map on early tourist maps, and it was put out by the Geographical Society, and Washington, D.C. is on the cover. Which I thought was pretty funny, but I just got that out of the Edward R. Hamilton catalog, and it's beautiful, beautiful maps in there, and it also has some photos, just the tourist photos and whatnot, but kind of what was going on in these different areas. I just got that this week, so I'll be delving into that one.
Teresa, this sounds like a great theme for another meeting. In other words, we used to have these in Boston. They were called popcorn meetings, where people would pop up and pop off. And they would each come in with a list of things, and then they'd have a session whereby you just go one at a time around the room, as it were, and they'd have their thing to suggest, but they'd also have the URL to pop into the chat, so anybody could save the full chat and have a transcript of the meeting. But we didn't even have to record it because you were interested as much in the URLs as in the commentary. But by the way, if you do record this and make it available, this session, to your members, I'd love to be able to find the URL. Maybe Tommy, you could send it along.
Working on it. I'm trying to keep up with the things that are being said. Therese, what was the name of your
let me get it was about travel maps. Let me see if I can find it, and I'll send that over to you. So I'll check that real quick.
Okay.
Although it's 10:05, is everybody back? Need a few more minutes here.
I think we're back.
Yeah, we do. Looks like everyone's back.
Okay, Tim, you want to get started?
Sure, I'll try to share a screen. I don't know if I can do it from my iPad, but I'll give it a shot. It says share screen, so I'll believe it until it tells me not to get off. But I'm starting a screen off of my iPad, because I found out in working with Tom's stuff that he had much more interesting material graphically than historically. So what I'm trying to do here is share you some idea of how I got into what he got me interested in, namely sharing graphic images of things that I'm studying in African history and African American history. And in this case, for example, we're looking at a slaving castle in West Africa. And the advantage of digitizing it, which Tom made clear to me with his gallery space, was if you digitize it at a fine enough resolution, like 600 dots per inch, you can start to look at things in detail. And I'll show you a bit of this just as an example. This is a slaving castle, which is under British control by 1753 in West Africa. In fact, it's based on a diagram that was made in 1727. So they were in control of it for quite a while. But you can look at the different compartments in the floor plan on one level. But far more interesting for the work that a lot of African historians are doing now is the insert in the upper right-hand corner, which is a map. And it shows you the location of the castle under the designation of A, the castle, in reference to Cape Coast Gardens. Now, when you think of it, this is something that is absolutely crucial to study, but nobody's done it. And you can figure out why they haven't done it fairly quickly as well. That is, it took a lot of food to feed millions of people traveling thousands of miles over hundreds of years. But nobody's asked the question, who provided the food? In other words, nobody's looked at the prior plantations that had to have existed in Africa in order to fuel and feed the transatlantic trade. Now, it's fairly clear why you wouldn't find that, because those engaged in the trade jealously guarded their food sources as a matter of trade secrets. They didn't go splashing this stuff around. They didn't want their competitors to know how they were doing it. And then those who were involved in the production in local villages had no particular interest, especially after the slave trade, in revealing what their role had been in the food supply for the slave trade itself. Now, it gets fairly interesting fairly fast when you begin to realize that these old diagrams are embedded within fort plans for the most part. And what we've started to do in a group called the Africa Map Circle is look systematically at some of these old diagrams. Let me show you what I mean by example. There is a group that is online that's called the Africa Map Circle. And anybody can log on to it. And we're in fact encouraging more and more American historians as well as African historians to get access to it. And we've made some resources available for them to explore. As I was mentioning earlier, once you give students the tools to explore something, you got to get out of the way, because they are so interested and so motivated to look at collections like the Library of Congress, map collections relating to Africa, those of the New York Public Library related to Africa, those are the Stanford University libraries related to Africa. So all of these things are just portals into their collections. The maps of Africa from the Illinois Library, Northwestern University Library. These are the centers that have strong African studies programs. The Yale University Library, for example, has fantastic maps that we weren't able to share, didn't even know existed before we started teaching digitally. But in the COVID moment, we've come to teach digitally and learn how to teach digitally. And Tom Paris' papers examples here have given us an inspiration of how to proceed, because you can look at an atlas like this, which of course you'd never get access to as a normal researcher. In the 50 years I've been doing research on African history, I've never been given access to an atlas that is this rare and ensconced in so many layers of permission that you can't possibly hope to work with it in paper. Even if you got access to it, you couldn't lean over it and get up close enough to it to make it mean much. But if it's digitized at 600 dots per inch, you can see Africa from a whole new point of view, especially in this case, since they draw it upside down, which is the classic Eurocentric vision of Africa at the time. We're looking at it from across the Mediterranean, as it were. And just by way of illustrating to African historians and Africans how their own continent has been portrayed, it's fascinating subject matter, which we shared in a meeting last month with the University of Ghana. But this is only one of the collections, as I say, and perhaps the richest collection exists in Afroterra. I don't know if any of you know about Afroterra, but it's an extraordinary collection. And its first map that it shows you is this kind of thing. They give you the map details and the like, but they've organized themselves as the free, you can see up in the upper left-hand corner, it's the cartographic free library on Africa that can be used by anyone in the world. And the real extraordinary feature of this was put together by the owner of the collection. It's a private collection. A fellow named Gerald Rizzo. He's a doctor, but he's a kidney doctor in St. Petersburg, Florida. That is, I've only seen him 3 or 4 times, but we've corresponded voluminously because of the richness of his collection. One of which you can see very quickly here, he's invented and devised a system for scanning these maps. It's very, very interesting. And this is a map which you can see north is indicated to the left. Not a convention that we follow any longer, but the Dutch did at the time. And you can see very quickly and probably identify for your own purposes what the subject matter here is. This, in fact, is Robben Island in the center of a bay on a Dutch map, which is the Cape Town, South Africa Bay. Now, for those of us interested in the millions of people transported thousands of miles over hundreds of years, what was of equal interest to the prison system that was developed in the islands off the coast was, as we zoomed in on this, the gardens. The gardens, again, in relation to a fort. And the buildings represented in the pink, the gardens that are the government gardens, but then also the gardens off to the side in the southwest or the lower left corner here, the private gardens. And of course, with the Dutch flag on it here, this is a Dutch company, and the British often referred to the South Africa as a cabbage patch on the way to India. Their particular interest in South Africa was not the territory itself, but the fact that it was a provisioning station on the way to their real empire, that is the Indian Empire. The Dutch are the ones that showed them that. In other words, the Dutch advance in maritime Asia that led to the development of the Dutch East India Company, which is the first joint stock company in the history of the world. And as it turns out, the Dutch East India Company was, in fact, the one that gave rise to the Dutch West India Company, which itself became the biggest trafficker of African slaves in the 17th, 18th, and 19th, even early 19th century. So we're trying to trace these documents, some of which are maps and some of which are very detailed maps when we look at them, to particular circumstances that can enlighten this question about the prior plantations. Let me show you one other map and then I'll quit here just to give you an idea of how rich this can be. This map here was made in 1753 by a fellow named Postlethwaite. Hard to pronounce in any period, but you can see the indication if we blow it up, and I did it for the Ghanaian historians last month. They had never seen this map, but it's pretty clear. And at 600 dots per inch, you can read the annotations of this on a fort by fort basis down the whole coast of West Africa. And there's so much going on in the Gold Coast, at Cape Coast in particular, which is where they held this conference. That is, I should say, it was a virtual conference online, but it was hosted out of Cape Coast. And Cape Coast is right there. You can see the Cape Coast Castle is indicated on this 1753 map. In fact, there's so much going on in this segment that even at the time the map maker made an insert within the map indicating a separate map of the Gold Coast, right? And he put a lot of information in it, including the Cape Coast Castle, but every other castle, and there were almost 80 of them up and down the coast here during the height of the slave trade, that are not only illustrated on the coast, but the interior trade routes are indicated as well. In any case, this has been named as a map that's one of the most 100 important maps for American history. The reason is it's not just a map of Africa, it was a map used by slave traders to argue for the increase of further slave establishments on the coast at the time. But within 30 years, at the end of the 18th century, when the American Revolution was underway, and shortly before the Haitian Revolution got going, this same map was used by the abolitionists as an example of the iniquity of the slave trade and the necessity of getting rid of it altogether. And that's why the historians have looked at these things most recently, have named it as one of the 100 most important maps in American history, because it has to do with the abolition movement. If you go back and look in detail at the other things that were printed at the same time, you can see, for example, that the French, very jealous of the presence of both the English and the Danish in this coastal trade, actually put out a directory of these different castles at the time. Elmina, Konradsburg, and here it is, the principal chateau of the English at Cabo Coast, Cape Coast Castle, where we held this virtual conference. In any case, as I say, it was Tom that put me onto this, and in part, it's what has gotten me irretrievably into a whole series of things which are now visible more in photographs than anything else, and they have to do with the wars of conquest of this region in the 19th century. So I'm trying to put together something of use to him. Here you can see some of the Ashanti prisoners that were taken at the time with West Indian troops and the like, and the kind of narrative that you can develop off of maps by giving the kind of thing that Cynthia indicated for treaties, for example, and going back through these illustrated London news accounts, which have, you know, on a detailed basis, an indication of sort of day by day some of these conquests, make it possible now to teach African history on a scale that we've never had before, especially when you relate it to the photograph. And here's where the miniature book is absolutely crucial, because you can put together miniature books of photographs of the early colonial period that motivate PhD students for years to look at the sort of close history of all of this. It's related to the material travel logs that came out in America at the same time. Same book, in fact. This is a thing, page from the Atlas of Châtelain, who was a 1719 French discovered. The digitization was not undertaken under favorable conditions. Here it's a snapshot, but you can see it's a description of the fishing, the clothing, and the manners of the inhabitants of Virginia here in Western Hemisphere. And these maps appear in the same volumes that detail the early ethnography of American Indian circumstance. So to tie something into this, like Cynthia's maps and treaties, would be fantastically powerful as a way to start teaching not only about American history, but transatlantic history going on at the same time. And in fact, European history, because as it turns out, one of the big forts in West Africa was basically a fort that was manned by the Brandenburgs at the same time that they were earning money in the slave trade. They were commissioning Bach to compose the Brandenburg concertos.
Thank you, Tim.
1721.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Do we have one or two very quick questions? Because it's getting late. We need to save some time for Leonard and to wrap up. Any questions?
Tim, this is Ron. That was really fascinating. About 10 years ago, we visited Robben Island where Nelson Mandela was in prison. What was Robben Island used for at the time of these maps?
Well, it was a fortress as well. You could see from the demonstration. And it was used basically to blow the other ships out of the water. In other words, the bay is so encircled that with a few cannon on an island like that, you can keep competitors from getting into your gardens or your fort on land. So it was used as a defensive
Thank you.
structure.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Just wanted to, just real quick, to mention to Tim, one of our members, Ken Habib, is fascinated by Africa maps. And I went to his house a couple of weeks ago and we shot 25 of his images and they're on an exhibit that he's working on.
Oh, really? Fantastic. Well, keep me informed because I'm jealous and I want to see whatever you do on these things. You've done a fantastic thing.
That sounds like a nice connection there. Leonard, are you ready to present? You're muted.
There you go.
All right, now?
There you go.
Perfect.
Okay. We might need to go over a little. I'd appreciate it since I formulated a presentation at the last minute and I'll forget it as soon as we're done. First of all, I'd like to say a few words about Juliet. Being editor of the Calafia is not her first rodeo, as they say on the reverse mortgage ads, being the editor. Her mother was an editor at Encyclopedia Americana, but her mother was foreign born and being trained in Northern Italy, a very, very Austrian and Germanic area. The subject of many of her sentences was at the end of the sentence instead of the beginning of the sentence. And from the age of 10, Julie was her editor, showing her how to, changing everything into American English. After that, she also, and she did this for years. After that, she was the editor of our local synagogue newsletter, and she fomented a lot of controversy when she put her own ideas in a newsletter that they thought was just going to be a list of events. And she was on the faculty of Catholic University for 9 years and has been an editor on the advisory committee of the Journal of Social Welfare out of Catholic University from, it's going on 30 years. And then it came up that we needed an editor and she agreed to do it. A few things. First of all, everything needs editing. Even the wonderful writers need editing, sometimes very little, but everything needs a little editing. And some of the articles need a lot of editing, and it is quite a difficult job. When she and I run an article together, I'm usually the administrative assistant who did the help to do the research and get it up. She writes the articles. When I write my articles, she's my editor, and I can tell you I need her because I'm no great writer. At any event, I also want to put in a plug for the Juliet and Leonard Rothman Holy Land Map Collection, which is in Searchworks at Stanford. And all of our maps, Holy Land maps, between 455 freestanding maps and 480 or something, or 50 maps in Holy Land atlases are in Stanford. We still have the maps. They've been memorialized forever. As far as Calafia is concerned, we are becoming world known. It is worth what we do. I don't remember whether it was in the last journal or it's coming up in this journal. There's an article from the Bodleian Library, thanks to Fred giving Julie the information about the Bodleian. They jumped at the chance. And Bodleian Library, in case you don't know, is the library of Oxford University. And to get their byline on something is pretty good. Furthermore, I want to say a few words about to Tom. We would be willing, I know Julie would be happy to do it sometime down the road, to do one of those in condo presentations, as well as projecting it with your stuff to the rest of whoever wants to see it. I think would be interesting. My present collection is my Holy Land map collection is closed. My map necktie collection is closed. My ephemera, you never know. Right now, I'm interested in three-dimensional maps. Actually, I had four-dimensional maps, which I didn't know to call them four-dimensional maps, but I call my globe collection, which you can see the antique ones over there. And this is the, which is in the journal. Believe me, it's the World War II war map. The official map. They do not have the complete map in the Library of Congress. In any event, and I call that my fourth dimensional maps, because you can spin it and see the other side of the world. In any event, I have about 16 or 17 three-dimensional maps. Beginning, I'm just going to show two. It begins about 1830 or 1840. In Japan, there was a ceramic district called Ito. And I saw a replica of a three-dimensional map of Japan, and I got hung up on that. And I've obtained two. One I can't show you right now because it's the last minute, and I can't take it down because it's embedded into the wall. The other is this map this is a three-dimensional map of Japan. And as you can see, I believe, I don't know, I think East is on the top. This is last minute that I'm showing it. And basically, if you touch the map here, it's all three-dimensional. And these were very popular. I have two. There was another one that I've seen in from a dealer in Australia, which was beyond what we were willing to spend, thank goodness, because I really don't need it. The other three-dimensional map I'd like to show you is a modern map. I started collecting these. I have about 16 on the wall, most of my wall space. And basically, I got on this idea of I'd like to be able to have a photographic memory of the geophysical presentation of the entire world. And this is best done with three-dimensional maps. Believe me, with them, it's easy. When it's a two-dimensional map, it's terrible. So we were on a trip to France, and you can't get very many three-dimensional maps in the US anymore because the Hubbard company's gone out of business, and you have to get it through Etsy, maybe eBay, etc. We met one map maker at a show here in San Francisco, and I got one of his maps. He collects these outdated three-dimensional maps by Hubbard, and he makes molds of them, and he creates three-dimensional maps, etc. And we got one at the show. Basically, in France, the three-dimensional map business is pretty good. And every bookstore in Lyon that we went to, and also I believe in Paris, they're in the bookstores. You can just pick them up like picking cookies off a tree. This is a three-dimensional map of the world. And everything that's yellow is raised, and you can feel it. You can take a mental photographic image of it. Interesting, all this green area basically shows Russia, the Ukraine, and the green is essentially flat, and you really get a feeling of the plains of the Ukraine. That vertical line up near the little cartouche up there on the left is actually Ural Mountains, and so I collect modern as well as ancient. I also collect ephemera, and any event. I also collect war globes. I think you might have, this was the World War II war globe. I'm sure it's the official globe. It's been a secret. But also I have about 5 or 6 World War II globes, as well as Cold War globes. Very interesting. How did I get interested in World War II? Well, my father was in the US Army as a physician for 11 years, 12 years. There's a plaque for him now hanging at the Marine Memorial Association in San Francisco, which is a wonderful little military museum, et cetera. And he was a physician, and he was the medical director of the New England Induction Station for all of World War II. Any event, so that's my presentation at the last. Oh, one other thing. We, Juliet and I, Tom and Eleanor and Bill Brandenburg and his wife attended the Brussels Map Circle sponsored IMCOS meeting in Brussels. And it was fantastic. The presentation, they took us to the Royal Library of Belgium, to, I'm blocking in all these places at the last, the military library, the scientific instrument library, the Duke of Normandy's illuminated manuscript library, which is in the Royal Library of Belgium. They were very nice. It was a pleasure not to have to talk to too many people, because when they heard that Julie was the editor of Calafia, she was surrounded at all the breaks. So, I mean, we're really there. Calafia is really unbelievable advertisement, as well as a real jewel, and I think it's worth the money. Fred has done a wonderful job, and he's gotten a lot of sponsors, which helped allay the costs. So one other thing we saw, which we didn't realize we were going to see, was, I consider it a strip map. We toured 1 week on the Rhone and 1 week on the Seine. And on the Rhone, or the Seine rather, it took us down to the Normandy beaches. Well, we've been to the American beaches 30, 40 years ago, and we had a choice, and we decided to go to the British beaches. And it turned out that the British beaches also, there's a town of Bayeux, and there's the Bayeux Tapestry. And it is like as if it was done yesterday. The presentation is wonderful. It's about 210 feet long. It goes in a big circle. I really recommend it if you happen to go that way. Any event, thank you, and keep on.
Thank you, Len.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you all for just staying these last few minutes. And if I could just take a moment to thank our presenters and remind everybody that we have the GLAM Gals. That's the second Monday of every month. It meets at 7:30. It's for maybe some novices or people who are not really, maybe just want to get a little more practice on map sharing, or if you just want to, you know, come and see what we have. This month's topic is transportation. And also check our website. We do have a meeting coming up February 5th, and that's for BAM. And that will be in person and virtual. And you'll get an update in your email as normal, but the website also has other events based on what we're aware of. Thank you all.
Thanks for organizing, Therese. Happy holidays,
Thanks, Therese.
everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays,
Thank you.
everyone.
Happy holidays.
Therese,
Thank you.
This has been great.
And
Thanks,
Happy
Ray.
New Year. Happy New Year to everybody.
Yes.
Happy New Year to you.
What talent we have. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Tom.
No, this was great. Thank you.
And I just wanted to comment about possibly doing the digitizing the maps.
Yeah,
Yeah, consider me when that
Oh,
gets going.
I will for sure. For sure. I wanted to, I mean, I'll send an email out to everybody, but to see how many people will come and, you know, bring their maps to have them digitized, if that's of interest to folks.
I think too, when it comes time to do that, maybe in Southern California or whatever area you're working in, we could just send out a notice to them and maybe kind of whatever guidelines, if you're looking for something, you know, maybe to sign up or how many prints they have.
Right.
And then basically, if we don't see it in your digital gallery, do we bring it?
What do you mean?
Well, I have some maps, some of the early trapping maps and whatnot. And
Yeah, bring it.
just
Sure.
What do we do when they're folded? Do we iron them before we digitize them?
No. I have plexiglass that's like
Oh,
a 2 foot by 3 foot piece of plexiglass. And so we press it down on it and it works well.
oh, okay.
And if we have something that's even bigger, so I'm doing a shoot tomorrow and I've got some like 3 foot by 4 foot maps and I'm going to shoot them in two pictures. And then I'm going to stitch them together in Photoshop so that I don't lose the resolution.
Oh my gosh, cool, so cool.
I'm learning lots of stuff here, but it's really fun.
Okay.
As you know, there are distortion problems with that, and you have to correct for parallax as well, because you basically would have a lens in two different positions, taking it at an angle. In any case, I'm sure you can do it.
Well, I'm going to figure that out. Thank you for.
if you can't, get some high school hot dog who knows Photoshop, because they figured it out.
Right. But
Okay.
I want to see a miniature book something that has to come up.
It's got to be this has got to be a $1 million idea. I mean, just to start with, she could sell the whole thing to the Metropolitan Museum as a way to do their exhibits.
Well, I'll admit I belong to the Miniature Book Society, and they had a booth at the Rare Book event in Pasadena a couple years ago, and I shrank down the application to just a little teeny tiny application, and that's what we handed out as a souvenir.
A lot of people loved it.
Well,
yeah.
You could make it as a keychain. You could do anything with it. I mean, you could make it as a full book filled with QR codes. Nothing but that. It would be an entire library. The digitized maps of West Africa. You could just hand them out as QR codes, which would send them right to Tom's gallery space. And the traffic that you'd get, I mean, they don't talk about this except in foot traffic, right? Well, this is digital traffic. The traffic you'd get through your site would be staggering.
I think too, when you have it on something smaller, the printing costs just got shrunk as well.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
I meant to ask though, how can I get some past inspirational issues of Calafia? Because I'm a newcomer, as Tom knows, to this. It's largely a convert from his enthusiasm. And I'd like to get some back issues.
I mean, they're all online.
Are they? Well, I didn't even know that, you see? That's how ignorant I am about the other half of the country here.
Let me see if I can find that right now. You're a Calafia member?
I don't know that I am. I've been launched into this by the Washington Map Society that shares things from time to time. And my good friend Ron Grimm has been pushing me toward this, especially on the theme that you're going to be covering, which I'm very interested in, indigenous maps, because his last multi-volume thing had to do with maps of America and an indication of indigenous maps that were available or not available, but that he knew existed in reference to different parts of America. So his interest in that got me linked with the African material that I'm doing. And he's the one who said, well, you really ought to check out the West Coast, because the Boston Map Society has actually gone under. They've gone into hibernation. And we've been absorbed rather graciously by the Washington Map Society. And they've given us a chance to attend their meetings. But it was Ron that suggested I attend yours. So I don't know that I am. I mean, I think I'm signed up in your database because I get emails, but I don't know that I've paid a membership. So please let me know how I should do that.
I will do that. It's pretty simple, but I'll send you a link for that. And then these are the archived issues that are online, and Len might know how to get the ones that are older than that.
Fred keeps the repository.
Yeah.
And he would know.
I see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
We are really thriving in California Map Society. And in case you don't see the small print, we have a formal agreement that we can put on every one of our publications that we are founding friends of the Rumsey Map Society of
Oh, good.
Stanford University.
Right.
And let me tell you something, a little society like ours can make such an agreement with a $17 billion company. There has to be a reason they wanted us. I think there were people that maybe weren't that enthused about the map library. But any event, we want it to be the West Coast answer to the Library of Congress. And then we're working on now having the Library of Congress be the East Coast.
East Coast, yeah.
The East Coast answer to Stanford and the California Map Society. That
don't
is
stop.
1,000-year work.
Don't stop there. No, because I did my graduate work on one of these Rhodes scholarships in Oxford at the Bodleian.
Yeah.
In fact, the books behind me are a picture of the study room at the Bodleian, where I did all of this early Africa map material. Now, I'll send along a link to you of the recent exhibit that my college at Oxford, Balliol College, put on about the slave trade. Balliol was founded in 1273, right? Several hundred years before the New World, quote unquote, was discovered by Columbus. So their continuous archives within the college have everything covering, I don't mean comprehensive. They have things from the dates prior to the emergence of the slave trade, through the slave trade, right through its abolition, and through the modern period. They put on an exhibit this last year, which was really quite staggering, about slavery in the age of revolutions, because it dealt with both the American Revolution and the Haitian Revolution. They put out a very stunning catalog about it, but I'll send you the links to it. And so they have been urged by me to go to the Bodleian and say, look, let's do a university-wide compendium of slave trade material, because yes, Balliol has, but there are 23 other colleges in Oxford that have equally rich collections going back to the 13th century. So there's no reason why that couldn't be digitized, spliced into the Library of Congress, spliced into Calefia. And you could write a series of articles on how this is emerging. In other words, document your own success.
Wow. Well, I'm going to sign off. Thank you
Yeah,
all.
Thank you,
Can't wait for the
Jason.
next
This is
meeting.
fantastic.
Me too.
Yeah.
Great to see you guys.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye, Tom. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.